todas,
Good
todos y todos.
afternoon, everyone. I wish to extend to you the most cordial welcome to this virtual event, Pride in Being Who We Are, More Opportunities for LGBTQ plus people. I'm Diana Rodriguez, the advisor for the Inter-American Development Bank. In spite of certain progress, it is still urgent to work in order to close the gaps that affect disproportionately LGBTQ plus people. Achieving their full social and economic inclusion in Latin America and the Caribbean must be a priority if we truly wish to achieve fair and sustainable and inclusive development. There's no development if only just a few people move forward and others are trapped in goals. Discrimination, marginalization of LGBTQ plus people constitute real, tangible, and painful barriers to the economic development of countries. This excludes the talent of people with diverse sexual orientations and gender identities, reduces productivity, and erodes a country's public finances. For the IDB, inclusion begins at home. Therefore, in order to move forward with the inclusion of all people, we must ensure an organizational culture that is committed to preventing and also eradicating any manifestation of discrimination against LGBTQ plus people. Therefore, we've designed inclusive selection, competitive recruitment processes, and we work every day in order to ensure diverse and inclusive workplaces where people will feel at ease and being who they are. We also work hand in hand with our work of employees and employers such as Globe in order to support that inclusion policy. Externally, with the support we provide to the countries in the private sector, as well as to our clients through IDB Invest and IDB Lab, the main goal is to move faster towards social and economic inclusion of LGBTQ plus people. To this end, at the IDB, we work on 3 different levels. First, generation of information and knowledge that allows us to identify where these barriers are to the social and economic inclusion of LGBTQ plus people. Secondly, promoting technical dialogues in order to jointly implement solutions that would allow for effective inclusion. And third, technical and financial support to the countries and to our clients in the private sector so that they can translate these true inclusion policies into practice. In the next hour, we will explore the work that the IDB is doing in 3 countries in the region, Bolivia, Ecuador, and Mexico, to move towards a more inclusive society for all LGBTQ plus people. We want that these examples of the IDB to be used as examples for the entire region, that these could be practices at a global level that can be adopted by other countries. Although we're aware of the fact that there's still a long way to go, today we're gathering in order to celebrate the road we have traveled and also to acknowledge those who have made it possible to cover that path, who have helped us visibilize the paths and have lived that exclusion. They've helped both development banks as well as governments, as well as the private sector and organizations to see what that exclusion is like and to help us design and come up with the concrete solutions. And today we are here so that we can all hand in hand continue to move forward, moving forward in order to have a more inclusive region for all LGBTQ plus people. Thank you for being with us. Thank you very much for being with us. Good afternoon, and thank you so much, Diana, for your words and for connecting from Colombia. Today is an opportunity in order to acknowledge the work done by all people living with sexual orientations and diverse gender identities who've devoted their life to improve the conditions of this population. But it is also an opportunity to commemorate those who unfortunately are no longer with us. At the IDB Group, we know how important it is to have these spaces in order to proudly celebrate that LGBTQ plus people see things in many different ways. We are in every country in the region, and with our presence, we contribute to enriching the economies and diversity of that region. You will wonder, what does the IDB Group in order to help and to work with this population? So today we have an outstanding panel in order to answer that question. My name is Daniela Brenes Morera, a communicator in the Gender and Diversity Division of the IDB, And with me, Maria Caridad Araujo, head of the Gender and Diversity Division of the IDB, Paula Peláez, head of Gender, Diversity and Inclusion, as well as advisory services of IDB Invest, and Elena Heredero, lead IDB specialist. Thank you for being with us, the three of you, and I leave you in the hands of Caridad. Thank you very much, Daniela. Good afternoon, everyone. It is a pleasure to be together with Paula and Elena in this event, and also with all of you. We want to talk about the work done by the IDB Group in order to expedite inclusion and full participation of the LGBTQ plus population in the region. Although we've seen progress, it is not sufficient. So this is an area where we want to move forward much more quickly. The IDB Group has two essential tools that guide our work. Both were approved in 2022. We have a gender and diversity work plan, and we also have a sector framework that provides us guidance on the what and how we want to work on in order to attain this objective. And specifically, when we talk about the LGBTQ plus population, we've set a goal, which is that 10% of our new investment projects during 2022 to 2025, in fact, will contribute to closing gaps and promoting solutions for LGBTQ plus people. Now, you may wonder, what does this mean that they're going to contribute? Well, this means that they will comply with three essential conditions. First, to have a diagnosis and analysis of a problem that disproportionately affects this population. Second, to propose specific activities guided towards the closing of these gaps, and third, to reflect that in results indicators that can be monitored during their implementation and to follow them up. That is our way of working. That is our commitment. Now, in order to begin working, in order to get going on this path, we have to start with data on knowledge, evidence, and that leads me to asking you, Paula, tell us a little more about the work done by IDB Invest recently and the study that you've conducted. Thank you, Caridad. Yes, from IDB Invest, recently we launched a publication, a guide, which attempted to support companies in the private sector to improve or to implement practices and policies that will be more inclusive of LGBTQ plus people. The publication is known as Pride in Action, and it is a publication that first and foremost gives us an overview of more labor inclusion in the private sector of that population, that community, but it also highlights several practices, best practices that we've collected in the region. Many times we see practices in different places in the world, but we made a huge effort in order to find them in the region and respect fully the maturity of the scope in the different countries where we're operating. We have insufficient data so far. It is estimated that close to 10% sees themselves as LGBTQ plus people. It is a population, as Diana was saying, that undergoes discrimination and exclusion, including significant economic exclusion. For the private sector, inclusion is a moral imperative, but also a business opportunity, talent opportunity, market opportunity, and leadership. So I would like to share with you some of the practices that we've seen and that we highlighted in this guide. We have Peru, for example. There's an NGO called Present, and this NGO launched a certification and a ranking of labor inclusion, LGBTQ plus. During the first year, 74 companies participated, and these were assessed. And then 22 have adopted concrete actions in order to improve their codes of conduct. We have the example of Mexico, Aeromexico, that in 2022 launched a code of conduct with high diversity and inclusion standards, where they explicitly banned any discrimination because of sexual identity, gender orientation, not only in the workplace, but in providing service to their clients and all their operations. But they have a beautiful campaign saying love doesn't know any boundaries. It is a campaign that allows couples of the same gender to get married, and they fly on the airspace where they do allow for this marriage. We have a Belize with companies, insurance companies in Trinidad and Tobago as well, but also in IDB Invest, we've seen clients that are taking the decisions. We have a client in Colombia, a financial entity, that is developing a financial product for surgery of gender confirmation. As you might imagine, this not only closes gaps in health, but also economic gaps and legal gaps, where we support people in order to bring about a change in name. This is Prosa, Social Interest Housing, a company that wishes to promote an environment of labor inclusion where everybody feels well received. And with their workers, they have people, mushes, people
que se consideran de tercer
from
género.
Zapatecos, the Zapateco community, the third gender. And within the practices they promote is for people to be able to wear their traditional costume, their dresses to the workplace. So all these examples and all these practices show that change is possible and that change is starting to take place moving towards inclusion. There's still a long way to go. I believe that we are very aware of that. IDB Invest is very committed to continuing working with our clients, and I do wish to stress the data aspect, the capacity of companies in being able to raise voluntary self-identification data, which is still a challenge, and it is one of the first steps in which we want to focus our activities. Thank you, Paula. And I go back to data and research. That is a key to be able to design informed decisions that will be effective. And I want to share with you two initiatives that we have underway in that regard. Through our knowledge lab of the IDB group, the DD Lab for Gender and Diversity, we've supported since 2027 studies precisely focused on better understanding the problem of inclusion related to LGBTQ plus people. The issues varied, but we started with precisely understanding the methodologies in order to quantify as accurately as possible the size of the people, making sure that the people will feel safe and being able to self-identify when they participate in the survey, going through studies that help us understand discrimination in the rental real estate market, and also studies that see how the mass media and television in particular might contribute to feeding certain gender stereotypes that promote exclusion or not. So ultimately, a significant range of studies, interesting, that are at your disposal so that we can design solutions, better informed solutions, in addition to the work done by the GD Lab within the bank, and precisely responding to the need that was highlighted by Paula to the effect of having more data. We've set up a data team focused on working on data issues, and hand in hand with the statistics offices in the region, we are cooperating through practice communities precisely in thinking how we can include and before the 2030 census, and also according to the polls that we collect, how we can include questions and methodologies that will enable us to become acquainted with information about sexual orientation and gender identity of the people. So this is essential work to be done for the design of a public informed survey. It is also innovative work because we haven't done much on these areas from this point of view. And on the issue of innovation, we're lucky enough to have with us Elena from IDB Lab, which is the innovation arm of the IDB group, but to tell us what they're doing there to work on the inclusion of LGBTQ plus people in the region. Thank you very much, Caridad. It is a pleasure to be with you, with Paula, and with all of you in this panel. From IDB Lab, we're greatly committed to the inclusion of LGBTQ plus people in the region. And for that, we are supporting several projects that attempt to improve their access to health services, legal services, employment, and entrepreneurial activity. In the last few years, IDB Lab has deployed a significant effort so that they can have a better employment opportunities, entrepreneurial activities, and we've done this in different ways. From the point of view of people, we're supporting them so that they can be trained with the skills and the necessary abilities to participate in the modern labor work in the workplace. An outstanding example is a Reprograma in Brazil, which is a programming school that trains Black and trans women and places them in the market as web programmers. This program had a significant impact. At least 70% of people were able to find a job, and we also saw that they were able to improve their salary a year after being employed. Also, we support the LGBTQ plus people in Venezuela, migrant people in Peru and in Ecuador, endowing them with entrepreneurial skills, social innovation, and adaptive leadership. Until 2023, we've had 200 people who self-identify with this communities have been able to graduate. And not only do we offer training, but we also have specialized organizations that provide psychosocial support for these communities and these people to be able to face phobias and xenophobia, which is something they suffer a lot in these communities. A key lesson that we've had with these two initiatives is how important social and emotional support is. People greatly value that they're giving support with soft skills such as the development of self-esteem, teamwork, and also skills in communication. And then on the other hand, looking at it from the point of view of companies, we're also helping them so that they will open up in order to welcome the talented members of the LGBTQ plus communities. I like saying that talent is well distributed in our societies, but opportunities are not. And many a times what happens is that we have biases and unconscious prejudices that don't allow us to see the potential of a certain candidate. And it is here where technology and innovation could be helpful. And we have a case of a Brazilian company, Yobecam. They use artificial intelligence in order to have anonymous candidates in the interviews, so make them invisible, and they use an avatar for the candidate, and they distort the voice, and they only show the identity when the recruitment process is already in an advanced stage. So thus, we want to make sure that there's an impartial hiring process and that we could have up to 250,000 women in diverse groups who can benefit from this. Along the same lines, we've also supported a company that offers digital services to the LGBTQ plus community in El Salvador. And what it does is to combat the labor discrimination through or because of sexual orientation and gender identity, providing them information about their rights, their legal advisory services, and also psychosocial support. So definitely we want to continue pushing and promoting this agenda. We want to support social innovation that are scalable, that are effective, and in the future we want to prioritize companies, businesses, and initiatives that are contributing so that these people will find better services, and also initiatives that have technological components, such as the last investment we made at the beginning of this year in a Mexican company, a health business known as Sophia. And what they provide is that they train doctors, physicians on how health services are to be provided to LGBTQ plus people. And it also helps them so that they will use adequate pronouns when they deal with them. And they also refer them to doctors specialized on health issues for these communities. So these are some of the examples. We're extremely committed to this issue, and we want to continue providing support in the future. Thank you very much, Elena. Very interesting, everything I'm hearing. I wanted to tell you about one more initiative. A few months ago, we approved a regional technical cooperation project precisely for the IDB and for the work we do with the public sector. It attempts to support the projects specifically linked to three sectors: prevention and looking after violence against LGBTQ plus people, health, and also employment services. And in these three sectors, we want to improve our diagnosis in order to understand the barriers and the hurdles faced by this population. and also to design solutions by governments, by civil society, obviously, by academia and the other organizations involved that will enable us to close these gaps, to solve these problems. And this is a very encouraging. This is work we see into the future. We believe that this is essential. Another area of work where we want to make headway with this technical cooperation is precisely in training and raising awareness amongst the people taking care of LGBTQ plus and public services in order to offer quality services, just like all people deserve. So there are a lot of things that we're doing, and we'd love to tell you about them, but we have our colleagues in 3 countries who also want to tell you about the work that they're doing there. I will simply close by saying that for the Inter-American Development Bank, it is essential to expedite the inclusion of LGBTQ plus people. This not only has to do with rights and not only with social justice and equity, but it is an imperative in order to achieve economic growth in the region and a better use of the talent of creativity and the potential of each and every one of us. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to Caridad, to Paula, and to Elena for their words. I am very happy to hear that we're working in the 3 windows of the IDB group in order to improve the opportunities of LGBTQ plus people and their opportunities. If you want to learn a little more about the work we do, I recommend that you go to the chat where we're sharing knowledge resources, articles, blogs, and many other things. And now I'd like to thank the people that are with us here, the officials that are here with us, also in the rooms of different countries. As Caridad said, we're going to travel in 3 countries in the region. This is just a small example of how all these proposals related to economic inclusion, with the support to education and all the other projects that we're working on, are translated into reality. So today, I invite you to take a trip to Ecuador, Bolivia, and Mexico, starting with Ecuador. They will welcome us. We have Vinicio Rodriguez, Head of Operations, Danilo Manzano, Founder, Director, and Representative of the organization Diverse Dialogue. Thank you very much. And Vinicio, you have the floor. Thank you, Caridad. Good afternoon with all of you. Welcome to the IDB, the Ecuador office. And thank you, everyone, for being with us at different organizations from civil society. I greet Daniel for being with us. Greetings to our colleagues at the IDB and also the members of the board of the bank who are with us united in this broadcast. From Ecuador, we wanted to start by saying that we're gathered here today to commemorate, to celebrate Pride Month. And we will pay tribute to the perseverance and tireless struggle of the LGBTQ plus community. We're also recognizing their rights and equal access to essential services, which is what brings us together here today. At the same time, let us ponder upon the details and also the challenges, the persistent challenges, and to reaffirm the commitment of the IDB with equity, inclusion, and equality, acknowledging that discrimination against the LGBTQ plus population is a barrier for the economic development of countries because we're excluding talents with sexual identities and different gender identities, and we reduce productivity, and public finance is also impacted by that. And let me give you a little bit of context to move forward. We want you to know that at the IDB in 2023, we developed a study where we focus on the social and economic gaps that affect the LGBTQ plus people in the region. And that study, experimental study on discrimination in the labor market, specifically in Quito and Guayaquil. And we found that there is discrimination that is clearly patent in salaries of gay men who receive 16% less by way of salaries in comparison to their heterosexual equals. In 2022, a study carried out by UNICEF and Ecuador's Ministry of Women and Human Rights showed that 53% of students between the ages of 13 and 18 did not feel safe in expressing their sexual orientation at school, and 21% of them reported having experienced pressure to reconsider their sexual orientation or their gender identity. Also, we are concerned to see that interventions in order to change the sexual orientation or gender identity, which are completely ineffective, perpetuate the discrimination and violate human rights. And with this preamble and being very grateful to have Danilo here with us, I'd like to ask you a question. Danilo, could you please comment on the negative impact and human rights violations resulting from what I just mentioned, from interventions aimed at changing the sexual orientation or gender identity of LGBTQ plus people? Thank you very much, Benicio. Warm greetings to all who follow us here from this room at the IDB. I'd like to start off by acknowledging that this is a wonderful opportunity, initial opportunity, I would dare say, where the doors of the IDB in Ecuador open up a space for dialogue that welcomes sexual generic identity. And in the 21st century, that is important. It is an affirmative action that ought to be acknowledged. On the other hand, I want you to know that I will not speak at my own personal title, but to reflect on the identities that we work on and also joint work that is being done together with different LGBTQ plus communities where we've decided to work together in an articulated fashion without speaking on behalf of anyone in particular, but a collective look. Benicio, I want you to know that from civil society organizations in Ecuador, we're extremely worried, both men and women. It is a truly public shame to know that as a country, we continue to appear on a list where our country appears as a space where the existence of centers that offer these tortures in order to attempt to cure homosexuality, clinics to eliminate the homosexuality as they're widely known, that are identified as these conversion therapies. And this is going against the rights. It is attempting against the life of many people, essentially young people. And what is most scary about this whole thing is that regrettably in Ecuador, we're not having a concrete response. We've had some progress, some significant progress that has been made from the civil society. We've built bridges with the current administration, mainly with the ministry responsible for looking after this issue. We've taken timely actions. However, we're worried to see that access to justice of those who've been victims, LGBTQ plus people who've been affected with their own families and who've been brought into these spaces, have not had constructive repair when faced with this breach of rights. And this is something that is of great concern to us, and not knowing how many are operating currently, not knowing what the real efforts that are being made by the state are in identifying and closing these spaces, that the law fall upon the owners of these centers, that is to say, enforcing justice, and on the other hand, to offer a comprehensive reparation measure to the people who've fallen victims to this. It is a latent concern. Currently, we're talking with you in this space, but while we do this, we have LGBTQ plus people that are subjected to conversion therapies. And in fact, it is shameful. It is truly shameful, and it must make us see ourselves as shamefully. We're not working directly in closing these spaces without offering reparation to their victims. Thank you, Danilo. As you rightly put it, these practices or these clinics or interventions that you just described are not good because they perpetuate discrimination and they promote a society that is less equitable and less inclusive. Danilo, we also wanted to hear from you with the experiences of civil society organizations. What are the main barriers faced by LGBTQ plus people in accessing justice? You mentioned something about justice, but I don't know whether there's something else that you'd like to talk about this.
Of course, it's highly related to the other question. In Ecuador, we are paying attention to different things. We are helping the LGBTQ plus community, individuals, and regardless of the place, sometimes in rural areas, even worse, access to information is still a challenge, especially if you're an LGBTQ plus person. Lack of knowledge hinders empowerment, and when an LGBTQ plus person is not empowered in terms of their rights, they accept that violence is part of their daily life. Here, from civil society, we want to raise awareness, and we're saying, what are the efforts being made by the Ecuadorian government in terms of empowering citizens, in terms of offering this type of information and telling the LGBTQ plus individuals what rights they have? What are they doing if rights are being violated for these people to have access to justice? I'm going to provide you with two examples. A year ago, in 2023, in Diálogo Diverso, we received an anonymous report. A person said that their best friend was in a clinic that was offering conversion therapies. We tried to immediately and timely go to their help. But this is not our obligation. This is not our obligation, but rather the government's obligation. The most concerning aspect of it was that when we managed to rescue this person who was internalized, who was against their will, there were different pieces of data, different things that scared us. The center was closed, but not because they were offering a conversion therapy to a homosexual person. The center was closed because the authorities realized that the center did not have permits. Their permits were expired. So, complete absence of those that have to be there regulating this type of establishments that need to take care of lives. When a human being, a man, a woman, regardless of their sexual identity and sexual orientation, everyone deserves professional support where they in order to overcome whatever challenge they are facing. However, that is not happening. After identifying the center, after having the center shut down, I had to go to a hearing with the attorney in charge of this homosexual person. He decided to sue his family. So I had to meet with a civil servant who made comments such as, I also had relatives like that, but they were put in a center to help them and they really helped them. And something else that they said is, but they also have AIDS, right? So what am I trying to say here? Well, I'm trying to say that yes, we have taken important steps in Ecuador. Civil society has made a lot of efforts trying to foster or to push for the rights of the LGBTQ plus individuals. We cannot have a person suffering any type of discrimination, even less when the government is not doing anything in order to take care of their citizens. In this regard, what can we do in order to have access to justice when those that have the decision making power have a great deal of lack of awareness, basically? Yes, I completely agree with you. The IDB has a technical cooperation initiative at a regional level in order to support these sectors and to strengthen government agencies so that they have a better understanding of this problem. Through this technical assistance, we will have a standardized manual or guidebook in order to address the issues of violence that you have mentioned. And now, I would also like to let everyone know that today is a day to celebrate, but we also need to recognize that we have a lot of work ahead in order to have a fully inclusive society. In Ecuador, we have shared what we are doing together with the IDB. I hope you liked the information that we shared. And now I would like to offer the floor to our colleagues in Bolivia. Bolivia, go ahead. Good afternoon. My name is Veronica Gonzalez Diaz. I'm Chief of Operations of the IDB in Bolivia, and we are very pleased to being part of this event. From Bolivia, we wanted to address the opportunities of the LGBTQ plus individuals, understanding the threats and as well as the progress in terms of labor inclusion, with a specific approach provided by our special guest, Andrea Salazar. She is an activist woman in favor of the rights of the LGBTQ plus population, and she's also working on the production of dairy products in Bolivia. In Bolivia, the constitution bans discrimination based on gender identity or sexual identity. However, the LGBTQ plus population continues to face very serious threats and challenges, especially in the labor market. All this later affects their labor opportunities. At the IDB in Bolivia, we're working in order to identify different options and promote aspirational models such as the one that our guest will share. I would like to start by asking you a question, Andrea. Could you talk a little bit about your experience in the Bolivian labor market and what has meant for you as a trans woman in terms of looking for work opportunities? Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you to the IDB for inviting me to take part in this event. During my transition time, I looked for a job as a surveyor and I applied for a job. And as soon as they saw me, they said, "Oh, no, the position has already been taken." I got a little bit frustrated, but I kept going. I went to the countryside. I became a dairy producer. I joined an association. I collaborated with them. The directors welcomed me. They told me, or they called me to be the director of this institution. Then they appointed me minute secretary because I had the capacity to help this institution. And after a little bit of time, they realized that I could be the general director. And I thought, whoa, that's quite a high ranking position. And I haven't even come to terms with it because I don't like when people call me manager. It's a great deal of responsibility, that's for sure. Anyway, based on my experience as a dairy producer, I understood the needs of the producers and I started addressing each one of them. I wanted to bring the institution to a formal situation. We established stronger relationships with different federations in the country, big dairy institutions in Santa Cruz, including the Ministry of Development. We are the only institution that could actually implement a project with the ministry. We also did it with other rural associations. Producers were provided with different types of equipment. We're very happy and I am very pleased for having had the opportunity to meet the needs of our producers. I've had a very good experience with producers. You always have an odd one, but in general, I've been very well welcomed. Even when I joined FEDEPLE, I had an experience with a friend. My name said Roel Salazar, and she asked me directly, "How do you want me to call you?" And that really warmed my heart. And I said, "Call me Andrea." And ever since, I'm Andrea for them. That's fantastic, Andrea. Thank you for sharing your experience with us. We can see through your story that you've overcome a lot of obstacles with resilience, with leadership, and you are sharing these values with your colleagues that are accepting you the way you are. Your story shows how You can be a trans woman in a highly masculine sector, and that can actually deepen vulnerabilities. But your strength and determination are inspiring. We saw where you started, where you are now, and the path that you've taken, and we're very proud of you. That's why I would like to know what type of skills have helped you get to where you are right now. Also, can you talk a little bit about the knowledge that you have acquired and how you've developed these skills? Well, in terms of values, you got to start at home. My mom showed us that we have to service people without expecting anything in return. She always supported me. I managed to develop a volleyball association of LaGuardia, always with the support of my mom. And thanks to that, I managed to register this institution as a legal entity. And that has actually helped me in the Cattle Rangers Association. All these little details have helped me along the way. I've acquired knowledge thanks to every single course that I've taken in order to learn and be able to help other people. When I open the cheese association, I took different courses to learn how to make cheese, how to make yogurt. I took courses with the IDB about fair pricing for the producers and find that balance point with the products that we were producing. Now that I'm a dairy producer, again, I'm learning how to use Creole cheese, yogurt, use different types of equipment, natural yogurt that are being welcome in the market. I'm very happy with the work that I'm doing in Santa Cruz. Thank you very much, Andrea, for visiting our offices here. We're also very pleased to know that the courses that we have provided as an institution have contributed to your technical training. We understand there is a lot of work yet to be done. We need to consolidate a more diverse and inclusive labor market. Based on our last survey, and I'm actually going to give it to you. I have a copy here with me. In Bolivia, only 34% of formal companies have a diversity and inclusion policy, and out of this, only 27% include consideration for the LGBTQ plus people. We believe that having this type of policy in place together with training could actually improve inclusion and quality of the works are accessible for the LGBTQ plus people. It is fundamental that this inclusion come together with spaces where everyone can feel proud of who they are and can grow personally and professionally, aspiring to be a person of change as you. With this, we would like to close the session here from Bolivia. Thank you for sharing your experience with all of us. And I would like to offer the floor to our colleagues from Mexico. Thank you for being here with us today. It's a pleasure to welcome you in our offices of the IDB Group in Mexico in order to have such a relevant and interesting conversation. As the IDB Group, as well as the Mexican country office, it's a pleasure to participate in the celebrations of this month, Pride Month, and to continue to work to bridge the gaps, economic and labor gaps, for the LGBTQ plus individuals. In a recent study carried out by the IDB in Mexico, it was estimated that LGBTQ plus people have between 3.8 and 5.6% less chances of getting a job. And that is just to provide you with a piece of data regarding the reality that we are facing. In order to have an in-depth conversation and provide you with an example of the work that Caridad was talking about, and the importance of data, we have the honor of having Dr. Julieta here with us, an expert in gender. She's a champion of the fight of LGBTQ plus people. Since 2022, Julieta is working as General Director of Communications, as well as Institutional Relations of the National Institute of Statistics and Geography, INEGI, Mexico. And before that, she served as Director of Communications and Spokespersons of the Mexican government. Julieta, welcome. This is your home. Let's continue to talk about the importance of data. Ecuador, Bolivia talked about this, as well as from our headquarters in Washington, D.C. In your opinion, from your role, why is it so relevant? Why is it so important to have information and statistical data about the LGBTQ plus population? Thank you. Good afternoon. It is a pleasure for me and for the INEGI to participate in today's dialogue. It's important to have data because, as we have heard this morning, this afternoon, LGBTQ plus individuals have been marginalized in all the different sectors of life, and also in terms of statistics and data. That is why having information is also a way or an action of statistical justice, so to speak, is also a way of bridging a gap, of filling a vacuum, and it also has to do with the needs of the time where we are, where more people, more populations are asking to be given visibility through statistics, especially through official statistics. And this is a very important point. Generating these statistics in the different spheres, but also from national statistical office in the different countries, promotes and helps the visualization of the LGBTQ plus people. In order, they also inform public policies that are important to mitigate inequality. They inform legislative debates at different levels. They has been very important in the Mexican case after a publication in June 2022 about this topic. This data also helps with academic research. There is a research agenda that also benefits with this type of data. And in technical terms, this type of research, of surveys, of specialized studies around the LGBTQ plus population is also important because it helps us refine tools that will help us measure and understand a population that is complex, that is diverse, that is ever changing, and that we know a lot through cases and stories, but that we also have a lot to learn about through data and statistics. Julieta, that is taking me to the next point. I would like to talk about the National Survey on Gender Diversity. Mexico, through this survey, has become an international reference regarding the collection of this type of data to inform all the issues that you have mentioned. Let's delve a little bit about this issue. When the survey was launched, you said it was in June 2022. And along the way, what has been the impact of this first edition, so to speak, of the survey? Well, we could say that the survey was absolutely relevant, a turning point in Mexico. It's the first survey in Mexico of this scope at a national level, represented by a federal agency. This was absolutely fundamental, but it's also been an international experience. What do I mean? Well, now the Institute is a trailblazer in this regard. Even more important than this, it actually put on the table a series of discussions about the best tools, techniques, and methodologies in order to better understand and better know the LGBTQ plus populations. 24 months later after its publication, the survey has had very serious impacts on the LGBTQ plus population. Within this community, this is a survey that is well known, and this is very powerful for any person that is LGBTQ plus, because then they can identify the different segments in society that are threatening the LGBTQ plus people, that deny their existence and that do not want to recognize them. We have now an official piece of data, statistical data, that recognizes this. This survey has also brought a lot of attention by the media, academia. In the Mexican case, it has also had impact in legislative exercises. For example, the survey was used to inform discussions that eventually led to the prohibition of conversion therapies in Mexico. This has been a historic struggle. And finally, through different types of partnerships, finally the prohibition has been implemented. And I think it went into effect this week precisely. In the city of Mexico, the survey also informed different initiatives that have to do with guaranteeing the development of trans children. And this is just to provide you with examples that show how relevant this type of instrument, how important this type of instrument is. Very powerful. Thank you. And now to wrap up, what are the next steps after the national survey? Is there a next phase? We are working together with you through regional technical cooperation. It was mentioned by Caridad. We're fully convinced of the importance of data to inform public policies as well as other actions. What are the next steps in this type of project? You said that there are other surveys at state level, and that is very important for Mexico. Could you talk a little bit more about that? Of course. The survey was done to more than 40,000 households. It has a high level of representation. It will be carried out periodically. This type of demographic instruments is implemented every 4 years, so to speak. So we will have another edition. And it's important to understand, to share that we have now a technical cooperation project with the IDB, and it would help us to move forward in two ways. First, in terms of carrying out cognitive tests, it's important to make sure that the questions are tested through different methodologies, questionnaires and focus groups, because we are more and more familiar with these concepts, but for the general population, for the target population, this type of survey can actually be quite complex. But the population, like I said, the LGBTQ population is ever changing, and we need to continue to explore different elements. That on the one hand, and on the other hand, the other element that has to do with the regional technical cooperation that we have to with the IDB has to do with fostering ownership of this data. What do I mean by this? We want to make sure that we give a face to this data. We give a story to the numbers. Behind every number, every figures can be powerful, but they're also cold. There are a lot of stories there. We have a project now that fosters awareness of the survey through different stories. And this is the second project that we are working on with the IDB. I believe both projects are absolutely fundamental in order to continue to move forward, raising collective awareness about this survey, and to continue to move forward in order to make sure that we have a more egalitarian society as well as more inclusive, which is our main objective. Thank you, Julieta, for sharing your vision and the INEGI's vision. You can count on us to continue to move forward on these two projects with our technical cooperation, but also in terms of the discussions that we can hold with different stakeholders. It is a pleasure to have you as a partner in these different initiatives. the work with INEGI, as well as everything that was said from IDB Lab and IDB Invest, is just part of the work that we are doing in Mexico in order to support the work that we're doing to overcome the barriers faced by the LGBTQ plus individuals. Over to you, Daniela, in Washington, D.C. Thank you very much, Gloria, Dr. Julieta, Andrea, Veronica from Bolivia, Venetian, Danilo, who joined us from Ecuador. It is extremely interesting and important, and actually very inspiring to know that from the public, the private sectors, from the innovation sector, and from civil society, everyone is working daily in order to improve opportunities of the LGBTQ plus population in our region. I would like to thank everyone who joined us today, all our panelists, as well as all the people that continue to work hard as activists and that continue to fight for a more inclusive, more just, and more diverse region. We want to have more initiatives and more countries join this cause. And I hope you all have a takeaway, which is that we are working hard to achieve this, and that we hope that soon all the LGBTQ plus individuals won't have fear or shame, but rather pride of who they are. And now to finish, I would like to share a video of our Ana Maria Ibañez, our Vice President of Sectors and Knowledge in the IDB. Again, thank you to you all. Happy Pride Day. Good afternoon, and thank you for being with us in our annual event to commemorate Pride Month and LGBTQ plus individuals. My name is Ana Maria Ibañez. I'm Vice President of Sectors and Knowledge of the Inter-American Development Bank, and it is a pleasure to share some closing remarks with you. As we have heard, discrimination based on sexual orientation, sexual identity, and gender expression limits the development of the LGBTQ plus people, and it becomes an obstacle in order to create fairer and more inclusive societies. This afternoon, we heard in first person from those that work to guarantee that this becomes a reality under the slogan, more opportunities for the LGBTQ plus individuals. We wanted to share what we're doing in our region from Ecuador. They talked about gender violence and how it affects especially LGBTQ plus individuals. This is a reality at a regional level. Between 2014 and 2020, 72% of homicides of LGBTQ plus individuals in 10 countries in the region were because of prejudice with their sexual orientation or gender identity. From Bolivia, they talked about the benefits of carrying out technical trainings in order to promote labor participation of the LGBTQ plus individuals on an equal footing. We don't have specific data for Latin America and the Caribbean. However, we know that in OECD countries, LGBTQ plus individuals face 7% less probabilities of getting a job than heterosexual and cisgender people. Having information about this gap in the region is key in order to design public policies that are effective. Precisely from Mexico, we heard about the importance of having this type of solid statistical data at a national level about the living conditions of the LGBTQ plus individuals and the barriers that they face. For example, 28% of LGBTQ plus individuals reported having received unequal treatment or offensive comments in their workplace versus 18.4% of heterosexual and cisgender people. We need to continue to work hard in order to strengthen institutional capacity and reach equality and inclusion throughout the entire region. I would like to use this opportunity to invite you to join this effort, sharing ideas, participating in projects, or simply reflecting about how we can build societies where being who we are is not a barrier for our well-being or for development. For those that shared their experiences today, thank you. Thank you for being the voice that motivates us to continue to lead initiatives, provide spaces and opportunities to LGBTQ plus individuals in Latin America and the Caribbean. Let's continue to move forward towards a fairer and more equitable future for people. Thank you.